1,000 boats, 40 starts every day, one stretch of water. The Solent separates the south coast of England from the Isle of Wight. Apart from being the cradle of yacht racing, it is one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. And for 8 days every August, Aberdeen Asset Management Cowes Week makes it just a little bit busier. The challenges for the race management team are huge. It can only run smoothly thanks to cooperation with the harbour masters and ferry captains around the Solent. This cooperation has increased over the years, and it's ensured a safety record which is second to none. The race management team is comprised of highly experienced volunteer race officers, alongside a staff of around 100 people, headed by professional sailor Stuart Quarry. Stuart and his team liaise with those involved in managing commercial shipping in the Solent. Associated British Ports, or ABP, looks after all the ships and tankers in and out of Southampton water, while Portsmouth is the domain of the Queen's Harbour Master. There are naturally close links with Red Funnel Ferries and Cowes Harbour Commission.
We have a serving Coast Guard as our safety officer to coordinate all our ribs and the committee boats that marshal our fleets, manage the starts and finishes, and where necessary assist the emergency services. Because it's such a busy stretch of water, it's imperative that we work with the harbour authorities. Historically, whenever one of the large commercial vessels came in and out of Southampton water, we had to postpone the starts because we didn't know exactly what time they were going to be there. Through our relationship with ABP, we now have one of the pilots working on the platform of the Royal Yacht Squadron with the race officers and liaising with his counterparts on the commercial vessels to minimise disruption. It's great to see how they can speed up or slow down just a little bit so that the ships come through the start line nearly always without causing problems for us. During the start sequence, we have either the Cowes Harbour Master or his deputy working on the platform with the race officers and liaising with his team afloat. We also have one of the Red Funnel Ferry Masters on the platform talking with his colleagues and advising them as which way the starts are going and exactly what's happening.
The water at the moment, you can see, is scarce of very many sailing boats, but this is completely different than it would be in Cowes Week. In Cowes Week, it's a hive of activity of sailing boats of all different sizes and capabilities. We have a patrol boat called Seamark that aids us in our passage from the fairway to our berth, and she sits roughly about 20 metres ahead of us and does a great job in policing boats out of our way just to minimise any potential dangerous situations. When we're approaching Cowes in Cowes Week, there's a start every 5 minutes for about 2 hours. So whereas normally we could run straight in, this is a very critical point of our passage. So our timings have to coincide with both start lines for the passage. We try to time the run so that we get to each start line once the race is cleared. To aid this, we have a colleague who sits on the start line. We find on the whole most racing yachts and sailing boats who aren't engaged in racing to be very considerate. However, on the bridge and as master, we have to look out for the odd yacht and the odd sailor that tries to push his luck a little bit.
Despite all of this planning and cooperation, things don't always quite go to plan. In 2011, a dramatic collision made headlines around the UK. A yacht racing in the regatta found itself in the path of a much bigger vessel. Thankfully, the crew were all okay, but ABP is working with the regatta organisers, Cowes Week Limited, to ensure that lessons really are learned from this collision. The sailing instructions for the regatta already provide for competitors to use any means of propulsion to get out of the way of commercial vessels without penalty. Here to tell us more from the hub of operations for the Port of Southampton is Martin Phipps, the Harbour Master for ABP.
Collisions between commercial ships and leisure craft are very, very rare in the Solent. However, this year, on the first day of Cowes Week, we unfortunately had an accident between the Atalanta and a rather large tanker. A ship coming into the port follows very much this line here. It comes up here to here and then alters course to port, and this is about a 40-degree alteration of course. It then tracks down here. Where we turn on this line depends on the tide. If we have an ebb tide, which is flowing this way, the ship will turn very shortly after it passes the Prince Consort buoy. If it's a flood tide, the ship will drop right down to the Gurnard buoy and then make its turn. A lot of people think that power vessels have to give way to sailing vessels, but this is not actually always the case. Bylaws are always the first rule that you have to follow. And in Southampton we have what we call a precautionary area, and in this area large vessels, commercial vessels, have right of way over yachts. We also have for slightly smaller vessels what we call a moving prohibited zone, whereby a yacht should keep at least 1,000 metres ahead of this vessel and 100 metres either side. You'll also notice a Southampton patrol boat in front of the vessel. This patrol vessel there is to make sure that the way in front of the ship is kept clear. Occasionally this vessel might come alongside you and very politely ask you to keep out of the way, and this is actually for your own protection, to clear the way for the large vessel. The pilot on the ship and the patrol boat are in communications with each other, and the pilot on the ship can generally see which yachts are going to get in his way. Occasionally the patrol boat will have to go off somewhere to deal with somebody who's perhaps getting too close or something, so you may not see the patrol boat right in front for a short while he goes and deals with the situation. But as soon as he's got over that, he will go straight back in front again to make sure that the way is clear. Another thing that yachts need to bear in mind is the visibility from the ship's bridge. On a large container ship it's probably about half a mile in front of you, and basically if you can see the bridge windows of the ship, the pilot or the captain on the ship will be able to see you.
Modifications to the sailing instructions following the tanker collision will now be made, together with some practical safety enhancements. Cowes Week Limited is working with ABP on the provision of outrider ribs to assist the ABP patrol boat. The aim is to ensure the danger zone in front of big ships is kept clear. If a bad situation is getting worse, the ribs will be on hand to ensure a yacht turns on its engine in time and steers clear. And this video is part of a safety awareness campaign to ensure that sailors racing at the regatta understand all the issues surrounding commercial vessels. As well as being aware of commercial shipping, it's important that competitors understand the need to look after themselves.
Sailors always need to take weather conditions into account. But what for a well-found boat with an experienced crew might be an exciting day's racing, for a smaller boat or one with less experienced crew could be quite different. Another vital part of the equation is the sea state. A particular wind force running with the tide can be quite benign, whereas when the tide turns, suddenly the waves get much steeper and the apparent wind is significantly higher. Cowes Week Limited obviously tries to get as much of the fleet out racing as possible. There will be many occasions when it's safe for some boats to stay fully in race mode, flying spinnakers, blasting off downwind, whereas other boats might be much more sensible for them to take a more cautious approach, maybe not use their spinnakers, and eventually sail faster and more safely. Ultimately, every skipper needs to make his or her own decisions and sail within their capabilities, those of the boat and of their crew. The RNLI uses the slogan, "Life jackets, useless unless worn." We don't expect all the crews to wear life jackets all the time and believe that, by and large, they should make their own safety decisions. However, if we think that the conditions are such that a class or the whole fleet should wear life jackets, then we'll fly the life jacket flag, Yankee, the red and yellow stripe flag. If we do this, then it's really important that everybody wears life jackets and that these are worn so they can be seen by other crew members and by the race committee. Otherwise you might get protested. Although not a safety issue as such, there will be lots of spectators and just cruising boats out on the water, and that the racing fleets need to extend them every courtesy. Also need to remember that the racing rules only apply between boats that are racing, and that if you come across a boat that's not racing, it's the normal collision regs that apply. Even though you might not experience any difficulty, others might. And it's a real duty of care that if you come across somebody who is in difficulties of any kind, whether racing or not, that you help them. Redress can be claimed afterwards, even if, in the end, assistance wasn't really required. If a boat is unlucky enough to have a collision with another boat, whether racing or not, it's vital that before carrying on, you ensure that everybody on board the other boat is okay, and if necessary, exchange details. It's very similar to having a bump with a car on the roads. Finally, if medical assistance is required, or if somebody's hurt, then the Coast Guard should be called on VHF Channel 67. If a casualty is being brought ashore in Cowes, Trinity Landing should be used, as this gives best access for Cowes Week Limited's first aider, who's a registered nurse, and is also where the ambulance will come.
Organising one of the world's biggest regattas is a year-round task. The relatively small number of serious incidents is testament to that preparation. The vast majority of boats and crews racing during Aberdeen Asset Management Cowes Week have an incident-free, safe and fun time. Cowes Week Limited looks forward to seeing you in August for a week of close racing under blue skies with fair winds, guaranteed to be what it's been since 1826, one of the highlights of the Great British Summer.